You and I have now had some time to digest the reports that Jerry Reinsdorf could sell the Chicago White Sox. Let's react to all the reactions next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, many reactions have poured in regarding the Athletics report that owner Jerry Reinsdorf is open to selling the White Sox. I want to zero in on some of them in the first segment. Then SoxMachine.com has two more managerial candidates to add to the list that I want to discuss. And finally, let's power rank the known candidates in the final segment. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Okay, so there are some reactions I heard or read through spending most of yesterday trying to consume as much as I can about the news that Jerry Reinsdorf could potentially sell the Chicago White Sox, that Britt Garoli, I'm pretty sure I've been butchering her name, but as she reported in The Athletic. And yes, that, one of the things I'm doing for you Sox fans is I dive in to all the news possible to relay back to you. Because remember, I'm here to inform, entertain, challenge you, console you, help you with your venting, all that stuff. But here's the tease of what I want to zero in terms of the reactions in just a moment. The first one, the idea that Jerry should not sell because the team is so bad is just absurd. The second one, the idea that the Sox would be more valuable in Nashville and valued by Nashville is undermining that what the Sox could deliver to the Chicago market if they had competent ownership. Jerry Reinsdorf staying on as the owner until he dies, which is sad that you and I have to hope for a man to die or the team moving. If you had to have your choice, they're both mutually bad. Okay. And I do not think you have to worry about a move to Nashville. I think you have to worry about a move to another city once the expansion musical chairs end, once the expansion musical chairs game starts and then eventually ends. And also then being completely done with baseball, if the Sox move, might not be the best idea. So those are kind of the reactions that I've seen. So first, let's discuss, no way Jerry should be selling after 121 losses. Well, first of all, the team is going to eventually be sold. That was one thing that I definitely, on the Bernstein and Harris show, for example, I think Dan Bernstein was really good at hammering. And I know you just said Dan Bernstein was really good. I know he's a very polarizing character. But anyways, I think he did a good job of hammering home. The Sox are going to be sold at some point because Jerry Reinsdorf has instructed his heirs, his two sons, to sell the team once he passes. Michael Reinsdorf is more interested in running the Bulls. In fact, he's the president of the Bulls. They're going to keep the Bulls. The Bulls are a more valuable franchise. Jerry views the Bulls and the NBA model as a better business model because even, they have a soft cap, but they have max contracts and they're doing a great job of getting national TV money. And plus, the Bulls are still living off the memories of Michael Jordan and Derrick Rose to some extent. So there. But, the belief that, why sell when you're at 121 losses? You got the fan base actually cheering for the opponent to beat the team. Apathy, public perception is at an all-time low. No one's going to pay market price for the Sox. Wrong. Plenty of deep-pocketed folks would love to own a sports team. Lawrence Holmes on 670 The Score alluded to some of the people he talked to are finding out that there are some rich folks interested. There's a family that owns the Phoenix Suns. One of the guys lives in Wilmette. Sounds like, that piqued his interest. They're like, really? Chicago White Sox might be for sale now? Just saying. And think about it. The LA Clippers sold for way above asking price after the NBA forced the Sterling family out of basketball for racist comments. The same for Jerry Richardson in the NFL. The Milwaukee Bucks were terrible at the time of their sale, and they went for a nice profit. And yes, I know I'm tapping into my Milwaukee background, so drink. But the Brewers started to turn things around overall in 2005 after years of being terrible and being neglected by the market and apathy. And guess what? They turned things around because they were sold. Imagine if you have a rich owner willing to spend a little money or invest in the team. Sports teams may have interesting economics, but they're licenses to print money and attract lots of attention to ego-driven wealthy individuals. And I would not be shocked if the Sox go for as much as 500 million or even $1 billion over the Forbes 2 billion estimation. Wouldn't be shocked. Would not surprise me. Second, I heard on a talk show I tap into that the Sox moving out of the market should just be a foregone conclusion, or at least very possible. Very, very possible. I've always put the Sox leaving Chicago at about 5%. It's there. It's a leverage. It's the Nashville leverage, for example, as Lawrence Holmes has always called it, or the Chicago leverage, that type of thing. But one reason, too, I heard is because it'd just be more valuable in Nashville than Chicago, and that there's no divine right to two teams in Chicago. All right, first, I don't think anybody's ever said that there's a divine right to Chicago having two teams. It's just part of it is it's the model. New York has two teams. LA has two teams. For a while, the Bay Area had two teams. Even Boston for back in the day had two teams. When you have large markets, you try to tap into that because you can split the baby. Also, the only reason the Sox, the only reason why Chicago has two teams is because of the old divide of the American League and the National League, and the Sox survived it. Where, for example, in Boston, the Braves pulled out of town. Although I think at one point Boston had like 17 teams, I swear. Anyways, first of all, Sox fans should be used to the threat of the team being moved. It's nothing new to the franchise or the fan base. Although to the younger millennials and the Gen Z, I know I'm explaining here, but hopefully your parents shared the tales of the possible Tampa Sox. I know my dad did. I know it's been well documented. But to just undercut the immense potential any new owner would have to build value in Chicago is just showing bias. It just is. You can cite the poor ratings, obviously, during the 2005 World Series, or the fact that the Sox have never drawn 3 million fans for a long time. But for example, the 2005 World Series low ratings was in part because of sour grapes Cubs fans, at least how I remember it. Okay. You can also cite the second team in the second city. That is because the Cubs did do an amazing job building up Wrigley, building up Wrigleyville and the neighborhood and making themselves basically out to be the cool kids. And not only that, the Cubs were actually good during the 90s and the 2000s. They made way more playoffs than the Sox. Although, hey, there was better baseball, starting in the 90s for both the Cubs and Sox in terms of playoffs. I mean, think about it. From basically 46 to 1984, there's only 3 playoff appearances in the entire city. Then you get to 89, and you start getting more playoff appearances between the Cubs and Sox. But anyways, the Cubs also make themselves, got to become the cool kids, not only by being better, but also being on WGN when every team fled to cable. You know how you counter that? By copying exactly what the Cubs did. Be a copycat league. That's what happens in pro sports. A new owner could easily build a wonderful stadium on the 78 with their own dime and the neighborhood around it. And suddenly, if you build it, they will come. Or as everydayers keep hearing me say, if you don't want to build on the 78, Guaranteed Rate Field is still an excellent ballpark. Build up Comiskeyville then. Build around the ballpark. Make some minor updates to the rate too. I get it. The tailgate is fun, but if it means more revenue streams with an owner willing to spend, sacrifice. And I get 33rd Street has some great establishments near the ballpark, but it's a couple blocks away. But the rest of the area around the park has the charm of a parking lot. Literally, seriously, Google Map Guaranteed Rate Field and look at the, above view and look at the overhead versus Wrigley. You're going to see a ton of parking lots, plenty of open space. Build up a hip neighborhood, and you have just as much value in Chicago with more people to reach in the Chicagoland area than Nashville. And I heard the question poised on some local radio shows. What is worse, Jerry not selling the team, Jerry not selling, or the team moving? I say both. Those are my 2 options to pick from escaping hell. I'll stay in hell because the other options are hell. At first I thought, well, the Sox moving, maybe I could stay a fan. And while if they do move, I'd still do the show because Disney trips aren't cheap. And I love talking baseball, but it would be a gut punch because I have shared a lot of my deep emotional ties with you about why I still root for the Sox, why I'm still one of the sickos, apparently. But the Sox were a safe place to me growing up. And it was developed by watching games growing up in the far northwest suburbs on TV because we had cable and going to games with my old man. And my old man scared the living bleep out of me. He ruled the house by fear. But for me as a kid, I didn't fear him there. I had those emotional attachments, and I know a lot of you have those emotional attachments. I've seen the comments on YouTube and the emails along with the Sox social media community saying it would be hurtful for the Sox to leave town. And yes, it would suck for Bridgeport to lose the Sox to the South Loop, but at least the team would still be in Chicago. But still having, Jerry Reinsdorf running the team, I don't know. And also, I think if the Sox left Chicago, you're going to lose that uniqueness that it has of having two teams in town. I think, a lot of Chicago land area citizens embrace that. And, you're being born, the doctor immediately says Cubs or Sox after boy or girl. And I think we take pride in that. The Cubs and Sox divide us, the Bears unite us. And a lot of my friendships as a kid were actually developed on talking baseball, and most of it was Cubs and Sox. And I believe Sean Anderson from CHGO, who I'm efforting to get on the show next week, he had a tweet that the main bidding group in Nashville wants to focus on expansion. And I think once baseball survives the next labor strife in 2026, there will be expansion, especially since it's going to be scorched earth from what it sounds like. Just from the stuff that I'm reading and hearing when I, hear other shows, hear other commentators that are more in the know. But one way to add maybe $4 billion is expand by two teams, put in a $2 billion fee. And yeah, I think that is going to happen. But I do think if you want baseball to thrive in a growing city built in part by tourism, go with expansion. You can cite the Titans all you want, but the NFL is a different animal. You see how the Predators gained the love of Nashville in part by being built there. The fan base saw it come together before their eyes. Same with Vegas and the Golden Knights. The Golden Knights are beloved in Vegas by the Vegas residents. But when you watch a Raiders game, it's filled with opposing fans, filled with tourists, because they weren't built in Vegas. They came from Oakland. And I see baseball expanding there in Nashville makes sense for the expansion fee. And then I could see them expanding to another market like, say, Portland or Salt Lake. But then you have to worry about the market that loses out in the musical chairs, such as Charlotte or whoever loses between Portland and Salt Lake, and even Montreal saying, fine, hey, if we can't get expansion, let's poach. Now, if the Sox move to Montreal, I'm staying a fan. Okay, that should be the only team that I would recommend you stay as a fan because the baseball still has been terrible and is missing the Montreal Expos, in my opinion. And I'll die on that hill. All right. And then being done with baseball, if the Sox move, that's a choice. But the game is still great. I would suggest just pivoting to another team. You don't have to be a Cubs fan, although my grandpa enjoyed his time before he passed away as a Cubs fan after swearing off the Sox for leaving over-the-air TV. You can pivot to another National League teams, as I always suggest to a Sox fan, have a second favorite team and have it be in the NL because they're only going to play the Sox once a year. And if it is a second time, it's probably going to be in the World Series, and you can bask in the glow of that. And again, mentioning Milwaukee, so drink. But you do have the Brewers. If you live in the Chicagoland area, it's not a terrible drive up north with a fine stadium. MLB TV's blackout restrictions would no longer get in the way of following any NL team unless they're playing the Cubs that day. So it's easier to follow out-of-market teams more than ever, especially with the internet. So it's still a great game. As Billy Chappell said in For Love of the Game, a highly underrated sort of baseball movie. All right, SoxMachine.com has two more names to add to the list of managerial candidates. Let's discuss who they are next on Locked On White Sox. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can always perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you that boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, Viagra, and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything everything from treatments to ongoing care. Start your free visit today on hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See websites for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on Locked On YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, so Josh Nelson and James Fegan from SoxMachine.com. Again, if you're not frequenting that site, you should be. Great White Sox content. Jim Margulis is also just a fantastic writer. These guys do great work covering the White Sox. But they have two more names to add to the list of managerial candidates, and I like how the Sox are tapping into the Rangers and Dodgers again with these names. The Rangers may have had that letdown season this year, but they did win the 2023 World Series and have a great way of constructing power lineups. The Dodgers are, well, the Dodgers, and I would love for the Sox to add anyone from that organization to help get the franchise to operate just like them. You know, a big market team that values drafting and development, like the successful small market teams, but also understands just how big their market is to draw in revenue to then go out and get players that put you over the top in free agency. Or again, why it's so valuable to draft and develop players, because then you can trade for, veteran players, known quantities that still put you over the top. More importantly, none of these two names have direct connections to Shadow GM Tony La Russa. So these names also give hope that maybe, and we have to like it or not, we have to trust Chris Getz is the GM because he ain't going anywhere. But Chris Getz is in charge and actually has an idea of what he's doing. The two names added to the list are Rangers bench coach Donny Ecker and Dodgers bench coach Danny Lehman. So the Sox probably have a better chance of prying Ecker out of Texas than they do associate coach Will Venable, who the Sox are reportedly targeting. Venable, though, is the assumed heir apparent to Bruce Bochy. But if you can get Bochy's bench coach, that would not be so bad. He is also the Rangers offensive coordinator, and the Rangers did win a World Series based off of their outstanding offense in 2023. It had the second best average in 2023. It was basically in the top five in pretty much every category. Now, they did slide to 21st this season, but also the Rangers had some aging decline, contributing to that. Adolis Garcia definitely declined. He's 31. Marcus Semien had some decline too. And also doesn't help when Corey Seager only plays 123 games. He was the hitting coach for the San Francisco Giants in 2021 when they won 107 games and scored 800 runs with a veteran roster that, really wasn't star-studded. And this is what Fagan wrote about him on SoxMachine.com. In the Rangers media guide, they cite that Ecker incorporates human movement research and technology-based applications to his instruction, and that he holds biomechanical certification as an integrated movement specialist. All of these are pretty sweet qualifications for a hitting coach, but Ecker has a reputation as a charismatic communicator that comes into greater play as manager. His time with the Giants means that he comes with a recommendation from Brian Bannister and Ethan Katz, and a source indicates a strong interview has kept him in contention. All right, so the only thing I don't like is the lack of playing in the big leagues. Former minor leaguer, was drafted, but didn't get to the bigs. And, strong interview, you always get a little leery because Pedro Grifol had a strong interview. But I did like this quote I found from a podcast he did with Finding Mastery that I think can overcome that lack of big league experience, and I think actually provides a vision. So here's what he said. Quote, and so those three overarching first principles for me has stood to the test of time. Are we creating simplicity? I'll do the heavy work and I'll do the complex work. Let me go to the deep end and I'll bring up a system that's simple, that operates really efficiently in loud, complex environments. And then the last one is that we're constantly pursuing self-interest of our people, right? That's it. So focus on those three things. So think about it. Sounds like he's interested in preparation, and I do want a manager focused on making sure every player is ready to win the game in front of them. And he seems to be, one way to get through to players if you've never played in the big leagues is to say, hey, I'm in the business of making you better, making you richer, that type of stuff. Danny Lehman is the Dodgers bench coach. Again, one knock I have on him too. Didn't play in the bigs. And I wouldn't mind maybe, looking at his background, being, maybe being in some other organizations. However, if there's going to be one organization you'll be a part of, I'd rather have it be the Dodgers than the Kansas City Royals. He started as an advanced video scout for the Dodgers. I think that's a good thing to have. Studying film, I think, is something that is always overlooked in being outlined in, modern baseball. If you read Moneyball, they talk about a lot of the film study that they do. And I think that always gets overlooked. And especially for hitting, you need the heat maps. You should have the data to communicate what you're trying to teach and get the players prepared. But film study, especially hitter studying pitchers, is so key. Then he moved on to game planning and communications coach and then bench coach. And I like the experience in game planning because I want the next manager to be one part clubhouse HR director, one part collaborating with pitching czar / guru Brian Bannister. And then I would love to see the Sox bring in an overall hitting czar and an overall fielding guru to make sure the entire organization is playing a winning style of baseball. And then the other part is making sure, then one part making sure the team is always prepared to win the game in front of them, and then being able to make the proper in-game decisions and adjustments to win that game. Win as many of the 162 games as you can. Lehman replaced longtime bench coach Bobby Green, who the organization gave different roles and a different title to, because according to Dave Roberts per DodgerBlue.com, quote, we're down one hitting coach. Brant Brown went to Miami, so we're looking for Bobby and Danny Lehman to sort of pick up that bandwidth. He's going to continue to work with catchers, the running game, continue to work with the hitting guys, and continue to be more of an extension of me. He's going to have to dig in a lot on the new rules, which he knows the rule book inside and out. Will also help the pitching coaches as well as the hitting guys and on the base running side of things. Danny Lehman named bench coaches more in title and also more of the idea to expand his role and not just be a run prevention coach, but take on some of the stuff I deal with on a day-to-day basis. But don't ask me if I get tossed who's going to go out there. I don't know that answer yet. End quote. All right. So, two names that I wouldn't mind being the next manager of the Chicago White Sox, and by my count, that is now 9 known names the Sox are targeting, plus a former 4-time manager of the year wanting it. So let's rank them next on Locked On White Sox. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your pick hits, you can get your money in as quick as about 15 minutes. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, and Indiana. So let's see. Fun and a simple concept with a chance to double my money if my picks hit. I can get my money quickly, and I can use it pretty much in any state in the Midwest. Sign me up. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. And again, welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. Really appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major platforms. And again, I hope you have a great weekend too. So I do like the wide net the Sox are casting. I also think it's a good idea that they're tapping into the Dodgers, the Rangers, and the Tigers. I wouldn't mind them kicking the tires on some of the coaches the Rays, the Brewers, and Guardians have. And it can never hurt to check in with some of the folks on the Yankees, Braves, and Mets coaching staff either. I would also love to know if they have spoken with Willie Harris, the former 2005 White Sox World Series hero, who, he has basically with leaving the Sox, going to other organizations, I think has washed the Sox stink off of him with his background. Internally, I think Sergio Santos should get a look too. And the only way Grady Sizemore should get the interim tag lifted is if all of the people the Sox are talking to say no. Great backup plan. I'd rather have him be the game planning and communications coach, for example. That I think is a great role for him. Otherwise, I like the pace that this is going at. You don't need to hire someone until the World Series ends because that's when the offseason really starts. So take your time. Cast that wide net. Chris Getz should make sure this process does not spit out another Pedro Grifol. And plus, this organization is so behind the times that take advantage of free interviews to get new ideas and concepts. So I want to power rank the 9 names from either Sox Machine, the 8 names, basically, because I'll get into why I'm not power ranking one of them, but from either SoxMachine.com, The Score, or national reporters such as Bob Nightingale and John Heyman have reported as candidates. I'll tell you right now, Buck Showalter, who I discussed a few episodes back, is reportedly, speculated to be angling for the job behind the scenes. I would put him dead last. Yes, he has accolades, but how things ended in Baltimore ruins it for me. Also, if this was 2020, perfect candidate. I'd take him over Tony La Russa because you had a team that was ready to contend and ready to win. That's the proper use of Buck Showalter. It's not the proper use of Buck Showalter to have in a rebuild. Just look at his resume. Doesn't work. He's better with veteran rosters. And I'm not going to rank Will Venables. Okay? If it was a possibility, he would be my 1A or 1B. But it's not a possibility. It's not going to happen. And I'm going to die on that hill, and I'm be willing to be loud wrong if it somehow does happen. Why would he leave the Rangers? He's the associate head coach. Why would he leave a way better organization if he's the assumed successor to Bruce Bochy? Unless he's been told, once Bochy retires, other names will be explored. I don't see him leaving, especially to go to the White Sox, a dysfunctional franchise that's basically the anti-Rangers. They don't build a power lineup for a ballpark that should have a power lineup. It's built for power. Think about it. The Sox don't even use their resources correctly. Why would he go there to that dysfunctional mess, especially if the Sox are going to be potentially sold? So let's rank the rest of the names from 8 to 1. Number 8, Phil Nevin. Too many connections to the shadow GM Tony La Russa, too many failures, and a few shows back I shared what the guys from Locked On Angels thought about him, and not great, Bob. Number 7, AJ Ellis. I like the idea of talking to him, especially since he's an assistant to AJ Preller, but I think it was an interview more so to see if he will join eventual coaching staff for the next manager, or here's an idea, see if you can hire him to be in the front office then. Number 6, Daniel Descalso. Again, too much Tony connections without any of the managerial experience. And I shared a few episodes back about how J.D. Hafren on the host of Locked On Cardinals, he could not relate anything amazing to me. He basically said he's the bench coach of the St. Louis Cardinals. Great. As the Cardinals way, the shine starting to wear off there. Number 5, Clayton McCullough. After seeing the Sox talk with Danny Lehman, I would rather hire the bench coach than the Dodgers first base coach. I mean, I think McCullough has some nice credentials. Don't get me wrong. But I'd rather see, them go with a guy who seems to have had a better apprenticeship to be a manager in Lehman, who I put at number 4. Number 3, Donny Ecker, as in the previous segment. Lots to like about him. Also, since the Sox hitting has been so terrible the last couple of years, sounds like a guy who could teach swinging the bat properly. Let's bring him in. Number 2, George Lombard is another dimension, maybe, in another dimension. Maybe he is already the Sox bench coach because A.J. Hinch should be the Sox manager. He was probably going to be the manager. That was who former GM Rick Hahn wanted to hire until Jerry Reinsdorf hijacked the 2020 hiring process and forced Tony La Russa on this organization, and we've had dark days ever since. With just a few rays of sunshine, or Tim Anderson hitting that home run in that Iowa cornfield and winning the AL Central. Otherwise, it's been nothing but bad. But still, I love Lombard's background as a former player, his work with Riley Green, and the background I shared about this week makes, I think it was 2 episodes ago, makes me very intrigued by him. He's on my number 2. Number 1, Skip Schumaker. Now, yes, there is the ties to Tony and this year's awful season for the Miami Marlins when he was the manager. But first, he was independently verified by Kim Ng, who hired him in Miami when she was running the team. Someone that we hope that I would love for the Sox to have actually, have in their organization, having running the team. And second, he was the 2023 NL Manager of the Year. So I think that washes off the Tony La Russa smell. Third, this year's Marlin team was riddled with injuries, and his new boss, Peter Bendix, gave up on the season very, very early. But he has a background in getting results on dysfunctional franchises. Well, dysfunctional franchise in the Marlins, as the team made the playoffs in 2023. Former players, and I've heard, he's a former player, and I've heard his views on managing that sound very, very good. Sean Anderson on CHGO shared that on one of their episodes of the White Sox, the CHGO White Sox podcast. Lot to like about Skip. All right, well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every aspect of the playoff picture. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I'll be back on Monday, and let's keep rolling through the review of the 63 players who suited up for the 121-loss White Sox, as I want to discuss the biggest disappointments of those 63. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding reacting to the reaction of Jerry Reinsdorf possibly selling the team, 2 more names to add to the managerial candidate list, and power ranking the known names tied to the Sox manager job. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dubber, at Locked On White Sox. Email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. See you Monday.